My name is Harper. I am 29 years old. For the first time in my entire life, I felt like I could finally breathe without a weight on my chest. The air inside the glass office of the bank was cool and smelled faintly of expensive coffee and sanitized surfaces. I smoothed the fabric of my cream pantsuit. It was a designer piece I had bought to celebrate my promotion to creative director last month. It cost more than my father Richard used to make in a week, but today was not a day for frugality. Today was a day for victory. Next to me sat Mark. He looked solid and reassuring in his navy blazer. His hand rested on my knee, and his thumb traced slow, calming circles against the fabric. We were minutes away from signing the final paperwork for a colonial revival on the edge of the city. It had a wraparound porch and a garden where I imagined planting hydrangeas. It was the kind of house people like my parents only saw in magazines or criticized from the window of their rusting sedan. I looked at Mark and smiled. He squeezed my knee. "You look beautiful, Harper," he whispered. "You look like you own the place." I felt like I owned the world. I had spent 10 years running away from the chaos of my childhood. I had run away from the shouting matches over unpaid electric bills. I had run from the shame of having my debit card declined at the grocery store, while my mother Brenda sighed and blamed the bank for her own lack of funds. I had clawed my way up from nothing. I paid my own tuition. I worked double shifts. I built a credit score of 780 through sheer discipline and fear. We were safe. I was safe. The door to the office opened. I straightened my spine and prepared my winning smile for Mr. Henderson. He was our loan officer. He was a graying man with kind eyes who had spent the last week telling us that our application was the strongest he had seen in months. But Mr. Henderson was not smiling. He walked into the room with a heavy folder clutched to his chest like a shield. He did not look at me. He did not look at Mark. He stared at a point somewhere on the carpet near his polished shoes. The silence in the small room instantly turned thick and suffocating. Mr. Henderson sat down. He placed the folder on the desk but did not open it. He clasped his hands together. "Is there a problem?" Mark asked. His voice was light and unconcerned. He was used to things working out for him. He probably thought we needed to sign one more form or provide a different copy of a pay stub. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. It was a dry scratching sound. "I am afraid we have hit a snag," he said. His voice was devoid of the warmth it held yesterday. "In fact, I cannot proceed with the closing today." My stomach dropped. It felt like the elevator cable in my chest had just snapped. "What do you mean you cannot proceed?" I asked. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "We were pre-approved. You saw my income statements. You saw Mark's portfolio. We have the down payment ready in the escrow account. It is not a matter of income." "Harper," Mr. Henderson said softly. He finally looked at me. His eyes were not angry. They were pitying. I hated it. It was the same look my teachers used to give me when I came to school without a lunch. "Then what is it?" Mark demanded. He leaned forward. His protective instinct kicked in. Mr. Henderson opened the folder. He slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany desk. It was a credit report. At the top, in bold red letters, was a number that made no sense. 420. I stared at the number. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "That is a mistake," I said. My voice shook. "I checked my score last week. It was 780. That is not my report." "The name on the file is Harper Paige," Mr. Henderson said gently. "Social Security number ending in 4589. I felt the blood drain from my face. "That was my number. There are significant outstanding debts associated with your profile," Mr. Henderson continued. He pointed a manicured finger at a list of lines that blurred before my eyes. "Because of the debt-to-income ratio and the delinquency on these accounts, we cannot underwrite the mortgage. The system automatically flagged and rejected the application this morning." Mark snatched the paper from the desk. His eyes scanned the lines. His jaw tightened. "Harper," he said. His voice was low. "What is this?" "I do not know," I whispered. "I truly do not know." He read the list out loud. Each item landed like a physical blow. "There is an auto loan for $65,000, Mark read. "It is for a Ford F-150 Platinum Edition. Purchased 6 months ago. The payments have been delinquent for 90 days. A truck. I did not drive a truck. I drove a sensible compact sedan that I had paid off 3 years ago. But I knew who drove a Ford F-150, my brother Chase. I remembered the Instagram post he made 6 months ago. He was leaning against a shining black monster of a truck. The caption read, "Hard work pays off. New wheels for the empire." I had assumed he finally got a real job or won a bet. I never asked where the money came from. Mark continued reading. "There are 3 credit cards maxed out to their limit," he said, totaling $24,000. Charges include luxury resort bookings in Cabo, a charge for $5,000 at a casino in Vegas, and recurring charges at a high-end day spa. My mother, Brenda. My mind flashed to the photos she sent to the family group chat last winter. She was holding a cocktail on a beach. She claimed Dad had won a bonus at the plant. She said they were finally treating themselves after years of sacrifice. She had sacrificed me. "Look at the billing address, Mark," I said. I felt like I was going to be sick right there on the expensive carpet. "Please look at the billing address." Mark looked at the bottom of the page. 42 Oak Street, he read. The silence that followed was absolute. 42 Oak Street was the house I grew up in. It was the house where I learned to hide my money in a hollowed-out book because my mother would steal birthday cash from my wallet. It was the house I left at 18, vowing never to ask for a penny. "They used my name," I whispered. The horror washed over me, cold and slimy. My parents and my brother, they stole my identity. Mr. Henderson looked uncomfortable. He started gathering his papers. "This looks like a case of familial fraud, Harper," he said quietly. "It is actually more common than you think. But until this is resolved and these debts are cleared or disputed, we cannot give you a loan. You are considered a high-risk borrower." Mark stood up. He looked down at me. For the first time in 3 years, I did not see love in his eyes. I saw suspicion. "Did you know about this, Harper?" he asked. "No, Mark." "I swear," I said. I stood up to reach for him, but he took a step back. "How does someone buy a truck in your name without you knowing?" he asked. "How does someone spend $20,000 on vacations without you seeing a statement?" "They used their address," I pleaded. "I never saw the mail." "Mark, you know me. You know how hard I work. You know I save every dollar." "I thought I knew you," Mark said. "But this is nearly $100,000 in secret debt, Harper. This is not a rounding error. This is a lifestyle." He looked at Mr. Henderson. "We are done here." Mark walked out of the glass office. He did not wait for me. He walked out of the bank and into the bright sunlight of the future I thought we were building together. I stood alone in the office. My designer suit suddenly felt like a costume I had no business wearing. I looked at the paper on the desk. The red number 420 stared back at me. It was not just a number. It was a message from my family. It said, "You thought you could leave us. You thought you were better than us. But you belong to us." My mother Brenda had enjoyed her spa days. My brother Chase was driving his dream truck around town looking like a king. And they had paid for it all with my name. They had burned my future to keep themselves warm. I picked up the credit report. My hand was trembling so hard the paper rattled. "I am so sorry, Harper," Mr. Henderson said. "Do you want me to call someone?" "No," I said. My voice sounded strange. It was hollow, but underneath the hollowness, something was igniting. It was a spark of pure, white-hot rage. "I do not need to call anyone," I said. "I am going to pay a visit." I walked out of the bank. I did not cry. Crying was for the weak little girl who used to hide in her bedroom at 42 Oak Street. That girl was gone. I got into my car and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I punched the address into my GPS, even though I knew the way by heart. 42 Oak Street. They wanted to use my name. They wanted to spend my credit. They wanted to drag me back down into the mud with them. Fine. If they wanted a piece of Harper, they were going to get all of her. The drive to 42 Oak Street usually took an hour, but I made it in 45 minutes. My hands were gripping the leather steering wheel so tightly that my fingers had gone numb. The interstate blurred past me in a smear of gray concrete and green trees, but I saw none of it. All I could see was Mark walking away from me in the parking lot. All I could see was the red number 420 burned into my retina like a brand. I had spent 10 years building a fortress around my life. I had built it with long hours at the office and skipped vacations and second-hand clothes. I thought the walls were high enough to keep the chaos of my family out. But I was wrong. They had not climbed over the walls. They had tunneled underneath them while I was sleeping and stole the foundation stone by stone. I turned onto the familiar asphalt of Oak Street. The houses here were modest. The lawns were mostly green but patchy in places. It was the kind of neighborhood where people judged you by how new your car was because they had nothing else to measure success by. And there it was. Sitting in the driveway of my parents' house was a black beast of a machine. It was a Ford F-150 Platinum Edition. The chrome grille gleamed in the afternoon sun like a set of expensive silver teeth. It was huge. It was aggressive. It was parked right in the center of the driveway like a monument to entitlement. I pulled my sensible 5-year-old sedan up to the curb and killed the engine. I stared at the truck. That was my credit score sitting on 4 rubber tires. That was my mortgage. That was my future with Mark. I got out of the car. The slam of my door sounded like a gunshot in the quiet suburban afternoon. I marched up the driveway. I did not look at the flower beds Brenda had planted. I did not look at the basketball hoop Richard had put up years ago. I walked past the shiny black truck, and I could feel the heat radiating off its engine. I did not knock. I still had a key on my ring. It was a relic from a time when I thought I might need a safety net. I shoved the key into the lock and twisted it. The door swung open. The smell hit me first. It was the rich, savory scent of barbecue sauce and charring meat. It was the smell of a happy family dinner. It made bile rise in my throat. I walked through the hallway. To my right, the living room had been transformed. Gone was the lumpy beige sectional that smelled like old dust. In its place sat a massive L-shaped leather sofa in a pristine cream color. It looked soft. It looked expensive. It looked like something I would have saved for 2 years to buy. And there was Chase. He was sprawled across the new leather like a king on his throne. He was holding a controller in his hands and staring at a 75-inch flat-screen television that was mounted to the wall. He was wearing a headset and yelling something about covering fire. He did not even turn his head when I walked in. I walked past him and into the kitchen. The sliding glass door to the patio was open. Richard was standing by a new stainless steel grill. He was wearing an apron that said Grill Master. He was flipping burgers with a focus that he had never applied to finding a steady job. Brenda was sitting at the patio table. She was holding a large glass of white wine. She was laughing at something on her phone. They looked peaceful. They looked content. They looked like people who did not have a care in the world. I stepped onto the patio. My heels clicked sharply against the pavers. Brenda looked up. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but then it plastered itself back onto her face. It was the smile she used when the neighbors were watching. "Harper," she said. Her voice was too loud. "What a surprise! We were just talking about you. Grab a plate. Your father is making his famous burgers." I did not grab a plate. I reached into my bag and pulled out the crumpled credit report. I slammed it onto the glass patio table. The sound was violent. It made the wine in Brenda's glass slosh over the rim and stain her fingers. "What is this?" I asked. My voice was low and trembling with a rage I had never let them see before. Richard looked up from the grill. He frowned. "Hello to you too, Harper," he said. "Is that how you greet your mother?" I pointed at the paper. I said, "What is this?" Brenda set her glass down slowly. She wiped her wet fingers on a napkin. She did not look scared. She looked annoyed. She looked like I had interrupted her favorite television show to ask a stupid question. "It looks like a piece of paper," she said. "Why are you shouting? The neighbors are outside. You stole my identity," I said. The words felt like broken glass coming out of my throat. "You opened 3 credit cards in my name. You bought a truck. You took out a loan for $65,000. Chase walked out onto the patio. He had taken his headset off. He was eating a bag of chips. "What is she crying about now?" he asked. His mouth was full. "She is upset about the paperwork," Brenda said calmly. She waved a hand at the credit report like she was shooing away a fly. "Harper, honestly," Brenda said. She looked me in the eye. "You are making a mountain out of a molehill. We did not steal anything. We borrowed it." Borrowed, I repeated. I felt like I was losing my mind. You cannot borrow a person's identity, Brenda. You forged my signature. You used my social security number. That is a federal crime. Oh, stop with the legal mumbo-jumbo, Richard said. He closed the lid of the grill. He wiped his hands on his apron. You have a good job, Harper. You are a big-shot director now, right? You have perfect credit. It was just sitting there doing nothing. Doing nothing, I screamed. It was for my house. It was for my life. Mark and I were at the bank today. We were buying a home, and they laughed us out of the office because my credit score is 420. Brenda sighed. She took a sip of her wine. Well, we did not know you were buying a house today, did we? She asked. If you visited more often, maybe we would know these things. This is not about visiting, I said. This is about theft. Who is driving the truck? Chase leaned against the doorframe. He smirked. It was a look I knew well. It was the look of the golden child who knew he could set the house on fire and be praised for the warmth. I am driving the truck, Harper, he said. And it is not just a truck, it is a mobile office. I needed it for my landscaping business. You do not have a landscaping business, Chase, I said. You mow 2 lawns a week. You do not need a $65,000 truck to carry a weed whacker. You have always been jealous, Chase said. He shook his head. You think you are so much better than us because you went to college. I am an entrepreneur, Harper. I have a vision. Mom and Dad are investing in me. Investing with my money, I snapped. Investing with your credit, Brenda corrected. And why shouldn't we? We raised you. We fed you. We put clothes on your back for 18 years. You owe us, Harper. A little help to get your brother on his feet is the least you can do. I looked at them. I looked at the 3 of them standing there in the afternoon sun. They truly believed it. They believed that my success belonged to them. They believed that my blood and sweat and tears were just a resource for them to harvest. You ruined my relationship, I said. My voice broke. Mark left me. He thinks I am a liar. He will come back, Brenda said dismissively. If he loves you, he will get over it, and if he doesn't, then he wasn't good enough for us anyway. Now sit down and have a burger. We can figure out a payment plan later. Maybe Chase can give you $100 a month once business picks up. $100 a month. The minimum payment on the truck alone was probably $900. I am not sitting down, I said. I stepped back. I am leaving. And then I am going to the police station. I am going to file a report for identity theft and fraud. The air on the patio changed instantly. The birds seemed to stop singing. Richard took a step toward me. He was not the bumbling grill master anymore. His face was red and his eyes were hard. You will do no such thing, he said. His voice was low and dangerous. Watch me, I said. I turned to go. Richard moved faster than I expected. He blocked my path to the sliding door. He pointed a thick finger in my face. You listen to me, you ungrateful little brat, he spat. You call the police on your own flesh and blood, and I will ruin you. You already ruined me, I said. No, Richard said. I will finish the job. If you go to the cops, I will go to every person in this town. I will go to your boss. I will go to Mark's family. I will tell them that you agreed to all of this. I will say you bought the truck for your brother as a gift, and now that your fancy boyfriend dumped you, you are trying to blackmail us to get the money back. I stared at him. The sheer malice in his voice took my breath away. You are lying, I whispered. Who are they going to believe? Richard asked. He smiled a cold, thin smile. The loving parents who have lived in this community for 30 years, or the hysterical daughter who ran away to the city and only comes back to cause trouble. Brenda chimed in from the table. Her voice was smooth like poisoned honey. Think about your reputation, Harper, she said. You work in a creative field, right? Trust is everything. Do you really want a public legal battle with your poor elderly parents? It would look very bad for your career. Chase laughed. It was a cruel barking sound. Yeah, Harper, he said. Don't be dramatic. Just go home. We will pay it off eventually. Probably. I stood there, trapped between the new grill and the new sofa. I looked at my father's threatening finger. I looked at my mother's smug face. I looked at my brother's stolen luxury. They had not just stolen my money. They had built a cage out of my own life and dared me to break it. They thought they had won. They thought I would crumble like I always did. They thought I would cry and apologize and eat the burnt burger and pay the bills for the next 10 years. I looked at Richard. I looked him dead in the eye. "You are right," I said softly. Richard relaxed. His shoulders dropped. He thought he had broken me again. "I should think about my reputation," I said. "Exactly," Brenda said. She took a long sip of wine. "Now come sit down. I am feeling a little sick." I lied. "I need to use the bathroom first, then we can talk about the payment plan." Richard stepped aside. He patted my shoulder. His touch made my skin crawl. "Good girl," he said. "I knew you would be reasonable. Go wash your face. You look a mess." I walked past him. I walked past Chase, who blew a kiss at me. I walked into the house that was filled with things bought with my stolen name. I went into the hallway bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet so the water ran loud and fast. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes were wide and dark. They thought I was washing my face. They thought I was surrendering. But I was not washing my face. I was waiting. I waited 2 minutes until I heard the sliding door close and the murmur of their voices start up again on the patio. I turned off the water. I did not open the bathroom door. Instead, I opened the window. It was small, but I fit through it when I was 16, sneaking out to meet friends, and I could fit through it now. I climbed out into the side yard. I did not go to my car. Not yet. I crept along the side of the house toward the window of my father's study. I knew where he kept his records. Richard was a man of habits. If there was a crime, there was a paper trail. And if they were going to frame me, I needed to steal the evidence first. They wanted to play dirty. They had no idea who they were playing with. I slid the bathroom window up as quietly as I could. The tracks were old and painted over with layers of cheap white latex, so the frame groaned in protest. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I waited for the sound of footsteps in the hallway, but all I heard was the muffled drone of the television from the living room and the clink of silverware from the patio. They were eating. They were enjoying their burgers and their wine while they discussed how to bleed me dry. I squeezed my body through the narrow opening. My heel caught on the sill, and I scraped my ankle, but I did not stop. I dropped into the mulch of the side yard. The smell of damp earth and fertilizer filled my nose. It was a smell I associated with forced labor on weekends when Richard would make me weed the garden for hours, while Chase played catch with his friends. I crouched low beneath the hydrangea bushes and crept toward the back of the house. The study window was my target. Richard was a man of arrogance, and arrogant men rarely felt the need to lock every window in their own castle. I reached up and pushed on the glass. It slid upward with a smooth, silent motion. I pulled myself over the ledge and tumbled onto the plush carpet of my father's sanctuary. The room smelled of stale cigar smoke and lemon polish. It was a room I had been forbidden to enter as a child. It was where Richard played at being an important businessman. Now I saw it for what it was. It was a command center for fraud. I moved to the massive oak desk. It was cluttered with papers, but I knew Richard. He was not organized, but he was paranoid. He would keep the incriminating things close but hidden from casual view. I tried the top drawer. Locked. I tried the side drawers. Locked. I felt a surge of panic. I did not have time to pick a lock. Then I remembered. When I was 10 years old, I saw Richard hide a key inside the hollow base of his ugly brass lamp. It was the kind of lazy hiding spot a man uses when he thinks he is smarter than everyone else in the room. I lifted the lamp. There it was, a small silver key taped to the felt bottom. I peeled the tape back. My fingers were shaking, but my resolve was iron. I unlocked the bottom drawer of the desk. Inside, there were no hanging files. There was only a heavy black ledger and a shoebox that once held expensive loafers. I pulled the ledger out first. I opened it to the most recent page. It was not just a list of numbers. It was a timeline of my destruction. In Richard's cramped, spiky handwriting, he had listed every credit card opened in my name. Next to each account, he had written a purpose. Chase Truck Payment, Chase Entertainment, Brenda Spa Membership, Richard Golf Dues. They had itemized my life. They had turned my credit score into a family budget. I flipped back a few pages. The dates went back further than I expected. My eyes landed on an entry from 11 years ago. I was 18 then. I had just started college and I was struggling to pay for textbooks. I was working 2 jobs and eating instant noodles to survive. Entry date August 12th, 2012. Insurance settlement, $12,000. I stopped breathing. I remembered that summer. I had been in a minor car accident with the old family sedan. I suffered whiplash and a fractured wrist. The insurance company had settled, but Richard told me the money only covered the repairs to the car. He told me there was nothing left for my medical bills. I had paid for my own physical therapy. I had taken out a student loan to cover the urgent care visit. He had stolen $12,000 from his injured teenage daughter. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the desk to stay upright. He watched me limp for months. He watched me work double shifts at the diner to pay the doctors. And all the while, he had $12,000 of my pain money sitting in his bank account. I reached for the shoebox. I needed to see what else they were hiding. I pulled the lid off. It was stuffed with envelopes. Some were unopened. Some were torn apart. I pulled out a utility bill from the electric company. It was addressed to Harper Paige, but the service address was not 42 Oak Street. Service address: Apartment 4B. The residence is at Cherry Creek. Cherry Creek was the most expensive district in town. It was where the doctors and lawyers lived. I looked at the date. Current. The bill was for $300. I dug deeper. I found a lease agreement. It was signed with a forgery of my signature that was so good it made my skin crawl. It was a lease for a luxury 1-bedroom apartment. Tenant name: Harper Paige. Occupant name: Chase Paige. Chase did not have a landscaping business. Chase did not even live at home. He was living in a luxury apartment in the best part of town, and I was paying for his lights and his heat and his air conditioning. I found another letter in the box. It was a final notice from a jewelry store. A diamond tennis bracelet purchased 3 months ago. Value $4,000. Chase did not have a girlfriend, or so I thought. I looked at a crumpled receipt stapled to the notice. It was signed by Chase. There was a note scribbled in the margin in his handwriting. For Misty. Do not send bill to house. Misty. That was the name of the girl Chase had dated in high school. The one who cheated on him. The one he swore he hated. Apparently, he did not hate her enough to stop him from buying her diamonds with my credit card. They were not just surviving. They were not borrowing money to buy bread or medicine. They were living like royalty on the corpse of my financial future. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of pure fury. I shoved the ledger and the stack of incriminating letters into my blazer. I needed to get this to Julian. I needed to burn their world down with the truth. I turned to the window. Well, well, well. My blood froze. Chase was standing in the doorway of the study. He was leaning against the frame with his arms crossed over his chest. He was big. He had always been big, but now he looked massive in the dim light of the study. The headset was around his neck. His eyes were not the eyes of a goofy brother. They were the eyes of a predator who had found a rat in his pantry. "I thought you were in the bathroom, Harper," he said. His voice was low and amused. But then I heard the floorboards creak. You never could walk softly. "Move, Chase," I said. I clutched the blazer tight against my chest. "What do you have there?" he asked. He took a step into the room. He nodded at the bulge in my jacket. "Did you find Dad's little book?" "I found the lease, Chase," I said. "I found the electric bills. I found the insurance check from when I was 18. He shrugged. He actually shrugged. So, what he said, "You have plenty of money. You are the big creative director. Why do you care if I have a nice place to crash? Why do you care if Dad kept a little cash for the trouble of raising you? You stole $12,000 from me when I was injured," I whispered. I could not pay for books that semester. "And we bought a new patio set with it," Chase said. "It was a nice set. We used it for years. You really need to let go of the past, Harper. It is unhealthy." He took another step. He was between me and the window now. He was blocking my exit. "Give me the book, Harper," he said. His voice lost its amusement. It became hard and flat. "Give me the papers. You are not walking out of here with them." I stepped back until my hips hit the desk. "No," I said. Chase sighed. He cracked his knuckles. "I really did not want to do this," he said. Mom is going to be mad if I bruise you. She wants you to look nice when you apologize to Mark." He lunged. He moved faster than a man of his size should move. He grabbed my wrist with a hand that felt like a steel trap. He twisted my arm behind my back and slammed me face first onto the desk. The pain in my shoulder was blinding. "Drop it!" he hissed in my ear. I cried out, but I did not let go of the jacket. I kicked backward and my heel connected with his shin. He grunted, but he did not let go. He shoved my face harder into the wood. I tasted varnish and dust. "You are such a brat," he growled, "always trying to ruin everything. Just give me the damn book." He reached into my blazer with his free hand. He was tearing at the fabric. He was going to take the evidence, and then he was going to destroy it, and then he was going to tell Richard and Brenda that I had attacked him. I could not let that happen. My right hand was pinned, but my left hand was free. My purse was on the floor where I had dropped it when I climbed in. But my keys were in my left pocket. I fumbled for them. My fingers brushed the cold metal. I felt the familiar shape of the pink plastic canister Mark had bought me 3 years ago when I started working late nights in the city. Pepper spray. Chase ripped the ledger out of my jacket. He laughed triumphantly. "Got it," he said. "You are pathetic, Harper." He let go of my arm to open the book. That was his mistake. I spun around. I pulled the canister from my pocket. I did not hesitate. I did not warn him. I aimed for his eyes, and I pressed the trigger with every ounce of hatred I possessed. A stream of orange liquid shot out. It hit him full in the face. Chase screamed. It was a sound I had never heard before. It was a primal shriek of agony. He dropped the ledger. He dropped the letters. He clawed at his eyes. He stumbled backward and crashed into a bookshelf, sending trophies and framed photos shattering to the floor. "My eyes! My God, my eyes!" he screamed. The fumes hit me and I coughed, but I did not stop. I scooped up the ledger. I scooped up the letters. I grabbed the insurance check. I ran. I did not go out the window. I ran for the door. I sprinted down the hallway. My heels pounded against the hardwood floor. Behind me, I heard Chase screaming my name. He sounded like a wounded animal. I burst through the front door and out into the cool evening air. My car was parked at the curb. It looked like a lifeboat in a dark ocean. "Harper." The voice came from the side of the house. I looked over. Brenda was running toward me from the backyard. She was holding her wine glass. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure venom. She did not look worried. She did not look like a mother concerned for her screaming son. She looked like a demon. "Get back here," she shrieked. "You little bitch! Get back here right now!" I fumbled with my keys. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped them on the asphalt. Brenda was getting closer. She was 20 feet away. 15. I snatched the keys from the ground. I unlocked the car. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door just as Brenda reached the handle. She pounded on the glass. Her face was pressed against the window. Her eyes were wide and manic. Her mouth was opening and closing, screaming words I could not hear over the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. She was not apologizing. She was not asking if I was okay. She was cursing me. I started the engine. I threw the car into reverse. I backed out of the driveway so fast the tires screeched. Brenda chased the car for a few feet. She threw her wine glass at me. It shattered against the rear bumper. I shifted into drive and floored the gas pedal. The house at 42 Oak Street shrank in my rearview mirror. I saw Brenda standing in the middle of the street. She was small and angry and shrinking with every second. I drove. I drove until my lungs stopped burning. I drove until the tears finally came. I had the ledger. I had the letters. I had the truth. But I had lost the last tiny shred of hope that my family loved me. They did not love me. They were vampires, and I had finally driven a stake through their heart. I drove until the adrenaline began to curdle into a cold and shaking sickness. The neon blue sign of the 2nd Precinct Police Station loomed ahead like a beacon in the darkness. I pulled into the parking lot and killed the engine. My hands were vibrating so violently that I could barely unclench them from the steering wheel. I stared at the glass doors of the station. Inside, I could see a uniformed officer sitting at a desk and typing slowly on a computer. It looked safe. It looked like the place you go when bad people try to hurt you. But I did not open the car door. I looked down at the ledger in my lap. I looked at the crumpled insurance check and the utility bills. If I walked in there right now, I would be a hysterical woman waving stolen papers. I would be the daughter of Richard and Brenda Paige, who were upstanding members of the community. Richard played golf with the sheriff. Brenda baked cookies for the church fundraisers. I could hear Richard's voice in my head. Who are they going to believe? If I filed a report tonight, it would be handled by a night shift officer who just wanted his shift to end. He would call my parents to get their side of the story. Brenda would cry. She would say I was having a mental breakdown. She would say, I attacked my brother and stole private documents in a fit of delusion. They would turn the victim into the suspect before the sun came up. I needed more than a badge. I needed a shark. I needed someone who could look at a ledger and see a felony, not a family dispute. I started the car again. I backed out of the police station parking lot. I felt a pang of cowardice, but I swallowed it down. This was not cowardice. This was strategy. I drove to the one place where I knew I would not be judged. Chloe lived in a townhouse 20 minutes away. She was the only person besides Mark who knew the truth about my family. When she opened the door, she took one look at my face and pulled me inside without a word. I collapsed onto her hallway floor. The ledger slid across the tile. They have everything, Chloe, I whispered. They have my name. They have my credit. They have been stealing from me for 11 years. Chloe made me tea with an excessive amount of sugar. She wrapped me in a weighted blanket on her sofa. She listened while I poured out the poison of the last 3 hours. When I told her about the pepper spray, she did not look horrified. She looked proud. You should have used a taser, she said darkly. I eventually fell into a restless sleep on her couch. I clutched the ledger to my chest like a teddy bear made of evidence. I thought the worst was over. I thought the confrontation at the house was the climax, and now I just had to deal with the cleanup. I was wrong. The confrontation was just the opening shot. Morning arrived with the brutal cheerfulness of sunshine streaming through Chloe's blinds. I woke up with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. My phone was buzzing on the coffee table. It had vibrated itself to the edge of the wood. I picked it up. There were 47 unread messages. They were not apologies. They were not pleas for forgiveness. They were declarations of war. You have made a grave mistake, Harper. This was from Richard. You attacked your brother. You stole private property. If you do not return the book by noon, we will take steps to protect ourselves. Steps. I scrolled down. There were messages from Chase calling me names that would make a sailor blush. There were messages from my aunts asking why I was trying to give my mother a heart attack. And then there was a voicemail from an unknown number. I played it. Ms. Paige, this is Sarah from Human Resources at Zenith Creative. We need you to come in for an emergency meeting immediately. Do not go to your desk. Report directly to my office. My blood ran cold. I looked at the time. It was 8:30 in the morning. I borrowed a blouse from Chloe. I tried to cover the dark circles under my eyes with concealer. I drove to my office building in a daze. Zenith Creative was my sanctuary. It was the place where I was respected. It was the place where I was the brilliant creative director who landed the biggest accounts. It was the one place my family could not touch. Or so I thought. When I walked into the lobby, the security guard did not smile and wave like he usually did. He looked down at his clipboard. I went up to the Human Resources floor. Sarah was waiting for me. She was a woman I had eaten lunch with. She was a woman I had laughed with at the company holiday party. Today she looked at me like I was radioactive. "Sit down, Harper," she said. She did not offer me water. Sitting next to her was David, my boss. David had mentored me for 5 years. He was the one who promoted me. He looked furious. "What is going on?" I asked. My voice sounded thin in the acoustic silence of the office. "We received a very disturbing phone call this morning," Harper David said. His voice was ice. "It was from your mother." I closed my eyes. Of course it was. "She was very concerned about you," Sarah said. "She felt she had a moral obligation to inform us about your current condition." "Condition," I repeated. "She claims you have been struggling with a severe addiction to prescription painkillers," David said. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "She claims you have been erratic and violent. She claims you have been using company funds to support your habit." I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "That is a lie," I said. "That is a malicious lie. My mother is retaliating because I caught her stealing my identity." David held up a hand. "She had details, Harper," he said. "She knew about the petty cash withdrawal from last week. She knew about the client dinner where the bill was higher than usual. She painted a picture of a woman spiraling out of control. And frankly, after seeing you this morning, you do look like someone who is spiraling." I looked down at myself. I was wearing borrowed clothes. My hair was messy. My eyes were bloodshot from crying. "I look like this because I discovered my parents stole $100,000 from me yesterday," I said. "I am not on drugs, David. I will take a drug test right now." "We will require a drug test," Sarah said. "But until the results come back and until we can conduct a full audit of your department's spending, we are placing you on administrative leave." "Leave," I whispered. "Effective immediately," David said. "You are the creative director, Harper. We cannot have this kind of cloud hanging over the leadership team. If the allegations are false, you will be reinstated. But we have to protect the company." My mother had known exactly where to hit me. She knew I prided myself on my professionalism. She knew the petty cash details because I had foolishly complained to her about work stress months ago. She had weaponized my own venting against me. She had not just attacked my family life, she had nuked my career. I walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with a few personal items. I felt the eyes of my team on me as I was escorted out by security. The shame was a physical weight. It crushed my lungs. I sat in my car in the parking garage. It was not even 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had lost my job. My phone buzzed again. It was Mark. I stared at his name. A tiny flicker of hope sparked in my chest. Mark would understand. Mark would see through this. Mark loved me. I answered the phone. "Mark," I said. I was sobbing before I could finish his name. "They got to my job, Mark. Brenda called my boss." "Harper, stop," Mark said. His voice was not the voice of a lover. It was the voice of a stranger. "We need to talk," he said. "I am listening," I said. "My mother got a call from your father this morning," Mark said. "Richard, he told her everything." Harper Mark continued. "He told her you bought the truck for your brother as a gift. He told her you have been hiding debt for years. He told her you attacked your brother with a chemical weapon yesterday because he confronted you about your spending." "That is a lie, Mark," I screamed. "I showed you the credit report. You saw the dates." "I do not know what I saw anymore," Mark said. "There are two sides to every story, Harper, and frankly, there is just too much smoke here for there not to be a fire." "Mark, please," I begged. "I have the ledger. I have the proof. Just meet me." "I cannot do this," Mark said. His voice cracked, but it held firm. "I come from a family that values honesty, Harper. We do not have drama. We do not have police reports. We do not have administrative leave." He knew about the job. Richard must have called him right after Brenda called HR. It was a coordinated strike. "I think we need to pause," Mark said. "Pause what I asked. Everything he said. The house, the wedding, us. I need space, Harper. I cannot marry into this kind of chaos. Do not contact me for a while, please." The line went dead. I sat in the silence of the parking garage. The concrete walls seemed to be closing in on me. 24 hours ago, I had a fiancé. I had a dream house. I had a high-flying career. I had a perfect credit score. Now I had a box of office supplies and a ledger full of crimes. They had stripped me bare. They had taken everything that gave me value in the eyes of the world. They wanted me broken. They wanted me to crawl back to 42 Oak Street and beg for forgiveness. They wanted me to accept that I was nothing without them. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked like a victim. But as I stared at my own tear-stained face, something shifted. The sadness began to evaporate. The grief began to burn off like morning mist under a hot sun. What was left underneath was not despair. It was clarity. They had taken away the nice Harper. They had killed the daughter who wanted to please them. They had destroyed the professional woman who played by the rules. They thought they had left me with nothing, but they were wrong. They had left me with the one thing that was more dangerous than money or status. They had left me with nothing to lose. I wiped my face. I picked up my phone. I did not call Mark. I did not call my boss. I opened the browser, and I typed in a name I had heard whispered in legal circles. It was a name that made rich men sweat and bullies tremble. Julian Vance. He was not a family lawyer. He was a shark who specialized in financial abuse and high-stakes litigation. He was known for being ruthless. He was known for being expensive. And he was known for hating liars. I dialed the number. It rang twice. Vance Law, a woman answered. "I need to speak to Julian Vance," I said. My voice did not shake. "Mr. Vance is in court," the woman said. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "Tell him I have a ledger," I said. "Tell him I have a case of familial identity theft involving 6 figures. Tell him I have been framed for drug abuse and assault. And tell him I have $100,000 in a retirement account that I am willing to liquidate to burn my family to the ground." There was a pause. "Hold on, please," the woman said. A moment later, a deep voice came on the line. It was smooth and sharp like a freshly honed blade. "This is Julian Vance. Start talking." I looked out the windshield at the city skyline. "I am done playing defense, Julian," I said. "I want to go to war." Julian Vance's office was not warm. It was a corner suite on the 45th floor of a glass tower that looked down on the city like a predator scanning for prey. The furniture was black leather and chrome. The air was kept at a precise 68 degrees. It was the kind of room that whispered money and screamed intimidation. I sat opposite him. I was wearing jeans and a sweater I had bought at a thrift store because I was saving every penny of my liquidated retirement fund for his retainer. Julian was reading the ledger. He turned the pages slowly. His face was a mask of bored indifference, but I saw the way his eyes sharpened when he saw the forged insurance check. "This is thorough," he said. He closed the book and placed his hand on it. "Most victims come to me with a hunch and a crying towel. You brought me a smoking gun. I do not want to sue them yet, Julian," I said. "I want them to hurt. I want them to feel what I felt in that bank office." Julian smiled. It was a terrifying expression that did not reach his eyes. "Litigation is loud. Harper," he said, "litigation is a drum that warns the enemy you are coming. If we file a lawsuit today, they will circle the wagons. They will hide assets. They will spin stories to the neighbors. They will play the victim card until the judge is weeping for the poor elderly couple with the mean daughter." He leaned forward. "We do not want a drum," he said. "We want a sniper. We are not going to ask them for the money. We are going to cut off their oxygen." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we treat this exactly as what it is," Julian said. "Identity theft. We are not dealing with family. We are dealing with criminals who have compromised your financial security. We are going to lock it down. All of it. Today." He pressed a button on his intercom. "Get me the fraud departments for Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion," he said. "And have the paralegals draft affidavits for the Utilities Commission and the auto finance lenders." He looked back at me. "By 5 o'clock today, Harper Paige will cease to exist as a financial entity for anyone but you. We are putting a freeze on your credit reports. We are filing formal disputes for every account listed in this ledger, and we are sending fraud alerts to every vendor attached to your Social Security number." "What happens to them?" I asked. Julian leaned back in his chair. He tented his fingers. "When you cut the oxygen to a fire, it does not just go out," he said. It gasps, it panics, and then it suffocates." We spent the next 4 hours signing papers. My hand cramped, but I did not stop. With every signature, I felt a layer of shame peeling away. I was no longer the victim. I was the executioner. We disputed the truck loan. We disputed the credit cards. We disputed the lease on the luxury apartment. We disputed the electric bill. We disputed the gas bill. We disputed the water bill. When I walked out of Julian's office, the sun was setting. The city looked beautiful and cold. I turned off my phone. I did not want to hear the explosion. I just wanted to watch the smoke rise from a distance. The rot did not set in immediately. It took 48 hours for the system to process the paperwork. For 2 days, my parents and my brother lived in the blissful ignorance of parasites who thought their host was still asleep. They probably laughed about my outburst. They probably told each other I would come crawling back with an apology and a check. Then the weekend arrived. Saturday afternoon was Chase's time to shine. It was the time he took his massive Ford F-150 Platinum Edition out for a cruise to impress girls who did not know he was unemployed. I knew his routine. He would drive to the expensive gas station near the highway because they sold the high-octane fuel he claimed the truck needed. I heard the details later from Chloe's cousin who worked the register at that station. Chase pulled up to the pump at 2 in the afternoon. He was wearing his mirrored sunglasses. He was blasting music. He looked like he owned the world. He inserted the credit card, the one with my name on it. He selected the most expensive fuel grade. He squeezed the nozzle. Nothing happened. The pump screen flashed a message. See cashier. Chase tried again. He swiped. He inserted. He tapped. See cashier. He stormed into the store. He threw the card on the counter. Fix the pump, he demanded. It is broken. Chloe's cousin ran the card through the register. The system did not just decline the transaction. A red box popped up on her screen. Code 10. Pickup card. Fraud reported. I cannot run this, sir, she said. The bank has flagged this card as stolen. I have to keep it. Stolen. Chase laughed. It was a nervous laugh. You are crazy. That is my sister's card. She lets me use it. Just run it again. I cannot run it, sir, she said. And if you do not pay for the gas you already pumped, I have to call the police. But the pump did not dispense any gas. Chase argued. He had no cash. Chase never carried cash. He relied on the plastic rectangle that I paid for. He had to leave the truck parked at the pump blocking traffic while he called Brenda. But Brenda did not answer. He called Richard. Richard did not answer. Chase stood there for an hour. People honked at him. The manager came out and told him to move the vehicle or it would be towed. He had to call a friend to bring him $20 for gas just to drive the truck home. He drove away in silence. The music was off. The sunglasses were off. The humiliation was absolute. But while Chase was sweating at the gas station, Brenda was facing her own apocalypse. It was the third Saturday of the month. That meant it was the meeting of the St. Mary's Ladies Auxiliary. It was the highlight of Brenda's social calendar. It was her chance to show off her renovations and her new furniture and her successful life to the women she secretly hated. There were 12 women in the living room. They were drinking iced tea and eating finger sandwiches. The new air conditioning unit was humming softly, keeping the room a crisp 68 degrees. Brenda was in the middle of a story about how Chase was expanding his business empire. And then the hum stopped. The silence was sudden and loud. The lights on the ceiling flickered once and died. The television in the den went black. Oh dear, Brenda said. She laughed lightly. It must be a power surge. The grid is so unreliable these days. She waited for it to come back on. 10 minutes passed. The house began to warm up. The afternoon sun beat down on the roof. Mrs. Higgins, who was the president of the auxiliary, fanned herself with a napkin. It is getting quite warm, Brenda, she said. Perhaps you should check the breaker box. Brenda went to the garage. She flipped the breakers. Nothing happened. She went outside to the meter. It was a smart meter. It had a digital display. It was flashing a single red word, disconnected. She knew what that meant. It did not mean a power outage. It meant non-payment. It meant the account holder had shut it down. She walked back into the living room. She was sweating. Her foundation was starting to melt. I am so sorry, ladies, she said. Her voice was brittle. There seems to be a mistake with the electric company. I will have to call them. But she could not call them. The Wi-Fi was down because the power was down, and inside the house where the cell signal was weak, she could not get a call out. The ladies finished their tea in the dark. They ate their warm sandwiches. They exchanged glances that said everything Brenda feared. They knew. They knew that people with successful business empires paid their electric bills. They knew that the Paiges were frauds. One by one, they made excuses to leave early. Well, Brenda, it was lovely, Mrs. Higgins said, but I really must get home. My dog needs walking. Brenda stood in her driveway and watched them leave. Her house was dark. Her fridge was warming up. The expensive steaks in the freezer were beginning to thaw. She was standing in the ruins of her social standing. But the final blow landed on Richard. Richard was at the Rolling Hills Country Club. He was not a member. He could not afford the $20,000 initiation fee. But he liked to go to the clubhouse bar and drink scotch and pretend he belonged. He drove the Lexus sedan he had leased in my name 3 years ago. He parked it right in the front circle next to the Porsches and the Mercedes. He tossed the keys to the valet with a casual arrogance that made me sick to remember. "Keep it close, kid," he said. "I will not be long." He was inside holding a glass of 18-year-old scotch. He was talking to a local real estate developer about investment opportunities. "Mr. Paige." Richard turned. The valet manager was standing there. He looked uncomfortable. "Yes," Richard said. He swirled his drink. "There is a problem with your vehicle, sir," the manager said. "Did you scratch it?" Richard snapped. "That is a $60,000 car, son." "No, sir," the manager said. "There is a tow truck outside. The driver says he has a repossession order." The bar went quiet. Richard's face turned the color of ash. "That is impossible," he stammered. "I paid the lease. My daughter handles the lease. It is a mistake." He ran outside. The tow truck was already there. A large man in grease-stained coveralls was hooking the chains to the Lexus. "Hey," Richard shouted, "put that down! That is my car!" The driver did not stop. He checked his clipboard. "VIN number matches," he said. "Leased to Harper Paige. Lender has authorized immediate repossession due to fraud, alert, and default." "Fraud," Richard yelled. "There is no fraud. I am her father." The driver shrugged. "Take it up with the bank, buddy. I just moved the metal." Richard tried to grab the door handle. "Get away from the vehicle, sir, or I will call the sheriff," the driver said. Richard froze. He looked around. The real estate developer was watching from the clubhouse window. The other members were watching from the putting green. The valet manager was watching with his arms crossed. They saw Richard Paige for what he was. He was not a wealthy investor. He was a man shouting at a repo man over a car he did not own. The driver lifted the Lexus. The tires squealed as they left the pavement. Richard stood there alone in the circle. He had no car. He had no ride home. He had to call a taxi in front of the people he had spent years trying to impress. I sat in Chloe's apartment and watched the sun go down. I imagined the lights going out at 42 Oak Street. I imagined Chase walking home from the gas station. I imagined Richard sitting in the back of a smelly cab. My phone was still off, but I knew it would be exploding with messages when I turned it on. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like victory. Julian was right. I had cut off their oxygen, and now for the first time in their lives, they were learning what it felt like to suffocate. For the first 48 hours, my family lived in the confusion of a sudden blackout. They believed the universe had simply glitched. They thought the gas pump was broken. They thought the power grid had failed. They thought the tow truck driver was incompetent. They were arrogant people, and arrogant people always assume the world is wrong and they are right. But confusion has a shelf life. Eventually the fog clears and the monster is revealed. Monday morning arrived with the gray bleakness of a hangover. I was still sleeping on Chloe's couch. I had turned my phone back on, but I had silenced the ringer. I watched the screen light up from across the room. It pulsed with a rhythmic, manic energy. It was not Mark. Mark was gone. He had retreated to the safety of his drama-free life. It was Richard, then Brenda, then Chase, then Richard again. They knew. I imagined the scene at 42 Oak Street. I imagined Richard screaming at a bank manager on the phone. I imagined him demanding to know why his access was restricted. I imagined the manager's voice, cool and professional, telling him that an affidavit of identity theft had been filed by the account holder. The account holder, Harper Paige. They realized then that the enemy was not a computer error. The enemy was in the house. Or rather, the enemy had escaped the house and was now burning it down from the outside. I picked up the phone. I did not answer. I unlocked the screen and opened the text messages. "You ungrateful little traitor." That was from Richard. "How dare you? After everything we gave you, you call the bank and tell them it was a mistake right now. Do you hear me? Right now." And then from Chase. "You think you are so smart. Wait until I find you. You are going to pay for my truck." I took a screenshot. I saved it to a folder in the cloud named Evidence, but direct threats were amateur hour. Richard and Chase were blunt instruments. They used hammers. Brenda was different. Brenda was a scalpel. She knew that threatening me privately would not work anymore because I had already left. She needed to hurt me in a way that would force me to come back. She needed to destroy my reputation. She needed an audience. Chloe walked into the living room holding her laptop. Her face was pale. "Do not look at Facebook." "Harper," she said, "just do not do it." "Show me," I said. I sat up and pulled the weighted blanket around my shoulders. "I need to see it, Chloe. I need to document it." Chloe sighed and handed me the laptop. Brenda had been busy. She had not posted a rant. Rants made you look crazy. She had posted a photograph. It was an old picture of me from when I was 12 years old. I was wearing a sundress and smiling at the camera. I looked innocent. I looked sweet. The caption beneath it was a masterpiece of manipulation. "A mother's heart is a fragile thing. You raise them. You sacrifice for them. You give them the very breath from your lungs, and then one day they turn on you. They abandon you in your time of need. They listen to the lies of the world instead of the truth of their family. Please pray for our daughter Harper. She is lost to us right now. We are praying for her mental health and her soul. We only want her to come home and get the help she needs." It was perfect. It was lethal. She did not mention the money. She did not mention the fraud. She framed it as a mental health crisis. She painted me as the prodigal daughter who had lost her way and painted herself as the saintly mother waiting by the window. The comments were already pouring in. "Oh, Brenda, I am so sorry. Praying for you and Richard. Kids these days are so entitled. Stay strong, Mama. If you need anything, let us know. We love you." I scrolled down. My stomach churned. These were people I knew. These were my old teachers. These were neighbors who had watched me grow up. They were swallowing her poison and asking for seconds. But Brenda was not done. She posted again an hour later. This one was a selfie. She was sitting in her dark living room. She had clearly used a filter to make her eyes look redder and her skin paler. She looked like a martyr in a Renaissance painting. Sitting in the dark tonight because sometimes when it rains, it pours. We are facing some financial struggles due to a family member's betrayal. It breaks my heart to say this, but we might lose the house. The house where we raised our babies. The house filled with so many memories. It is hard to believe that someone we love could be so cruel to their own aging parents. Richard's blood pressure is through the roof. I am so worried about his heart. Please pray that we survive this. She was weaponizing my father's health. Richard had the constitution of an ox. He had high blood pressure because he ate red meat 3 times a day and refused to exercise. But to the internet, he was a fragile old man being murdered by his heartless daughter. This post had hundreds of likes. It had been shared 40 times. I took screenshots. I saved every single one. Julian had warned me about this. He called it the extinction burst. When a narcissist loses control, they try to destroy the thing they can no longer control. Then the flying monkeys arrived. In psychology terms, a flying monkey is an enabler who does the narcissist's dirty work. In my life, they were my aunts and my cousins. My phone began to vibrate with a new intensity. The first call was from Aunt Linda. Linda was Brenda's younger sister. She was a woman who lived for gossip and judged everyone who did not live up to her narrow standards of piety. I let it go to voicemail. "Harper, this is your Aunt Linda." Her voice was tight and trembling with righteous indignation. "I just saw your mother's post. I am shaking, Harper. I am literally shaking. How could you do this? Your mother is sitting in the dark crying her eyes out. Your father is sick. And you are somewhere playing games with their bank accounts. You should be ashamed of yourself. You are a selfish, ungrateful girl. Call your mother immediately and fix this. Save." Then came a text from my cousin Becca. Becca and I used to play dolls together. WTF Harper. "My mom says you stole money from Aunt Brenda. That is low even for you. You always thought you were better than us, but this is just criminal. You need to go home and apologize. Save." Then Uncle Bob. "Your father is a good man, Harper. He worked hard all his life. You have no right to treat him like this. If anything happens to him, if he has a stroke because of this stress, it is on your hands. Do you hear me? It is on your hands. Save." The messages came in a deluge. It was a coordinated bombardment. Brenda must have been working the phones all morning. She was rallying the troops. She was spinning a narrative where I was the villain and she was the victim, and anyone who did not attack me was disloyal to the clan. I sat on the couch and watched the hatred roll in. It hurt. I cannot lie and say it did not hurt. These were people I had spent Christmas with. These were people who had given me birthday cards. To see them turn on me so instantly and so completely was like watching a familiar face melt into a skull. They did not ask for my side of the story. They did not ask if it was true. They simply believed Brenda because Brenda was the loud one. Brenda was the one crying in public. I wanted to reply. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post the credit report on Facebook and tag every single one of them. I wanted to upload the video of Chase screaming about his truck. I wanted to show them the ledger. But I remembered Julian's voice. Do not engage Harper. Silence is your shield. Anything you say will be twisted. Anything you post will be used to call you unstable. Let them scream. You just collect the tapes. So I did not reply. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop. I created columns: date, time, sender, content, screenshot link. I logged every text. I transcribed every voicemail. I captured every Facebook comment. It was tedious work. It was painful work. But it was necessary work. By noon, I had 73 entries. 73 times my family had tried to break me. 73 times they had proven that their love was conditional on my submission. The harassment escalated as the day wore on. Chase sent a picture of my old bedroom. He had torn the posters off the walls. He had dumped the drawers of my old dresser onto the floor. Oops, he wrote. Looking for something to sell since you cut us off. Hope you did not want any of this junk. He was destroying my childhood. He was trying to get a rise out of me. He wanted me to call him crying so he could laugh at me. I saved the photo. I added it to the spreadsheet under property damage and intimidation. Then came the email from my grandmother. Grandma Paige was 90 years old. She lived in a nursing home 2 towns over. She was the matriarch. She was the only one Richard feared. The email was short. It had clearly been dictated to a nurse, or maybe Brenda had typed it herself and just used her name. Harper, I am disappointed. A family sticks together. A family shares burdens. You are breaking the circle. Come back before it is too late. That one made me cry. Just a little. But then I looked at the timestamp. It was sent from Brenda's iPad. Brenda was using a 90-year-old woman as a human shield. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. There was no line she would not cross. There was no depth she would not sink to. I wiped my eyes. I took a sip of cold coffee. I looked at Chloe, who was sitting across the room pretending to read a book while keeping one eye on me. They are really going for it, aren't they? Chloe asked softly. They are throwing the kitchen sink, I said. They are terrified, Chloe. This is not anger, this is panic. I looked at the spreadsheet. It was full of venom, but it was also full of evidence. In a court of law, this was not a family dispute. This was harassment. This was cyberstalking. This was witness intimidation. They thought they were burying me under a mountain of shame, but they were actually digging their own graves. They were giving me everything I needed to get a restraining order. They were giving me the ammunition to prove that I was unsafe. My phone buzzed again. It was Mark. I stared at the screen. My heart jumped. Maybe he had come to his senses. Maybe he realized he had made a mistake. I opened the text. Harper, please tell your family to stop calling me. Your mother has called me 6 times today. She is crying and asking me to intervene. She says you are having a breakdown. I cannot handle this. I am blocking you and them. Do not come to the apartment. I stared at the words. Mark was not coming to save me. Mark was just another casualty of Brenda's war. She had harassed him until he broke. She had ensured that I had no allies left. She wanted me isolated. She wanted me alone. But I was not alone. I had Chloe, I had Julian, and I had 73 screenshots of the truth. I closed the spreadsheet. I saved the file. I sent a copy to Julian with a subject line that simply read, "The harassment evidence. Day 1. I put the phone down. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the street. I was not the girl they thought I was. I was not the fragile daughter who needed their approval to breathe. Let them post. Let them text. Let them scream into the digital void. I was building a case, and when I was done, they would wish they had stayed in the dark. 3 months is a long time in the life of a credit cycle. It is 90 days of silence. It is 3 billing statements that finally arrive with zeros in the balance column. I sat on the floor of my new apartment. It was not the colonial revival house with the wraparound porch that Mark and I had dreamed of. It was a 4th-floor walk-up in a part of the city where the sirens wailed every night like clockwork. The carpet was a suspicious shade of brown, and the radiator clanked like a dying engine. But it was mine. The lease was in my name. The electric bill was in my name. And for the first time in 10 years, I knew exactly where every cent of my money was going. I sipped my tea and looked around the small living room. I had furnished it with things from thrift stores and garage sales, a wobbly coffee table, a lamp with a slightly crooked shade, a bookshelf I had assembled myself with a screwdriver, and a lot of cursing. It was humble. It was quiet. It was peaceful. My phone sat on the table. It had been quiet, too. After the first explosive week of harassment, Julian Vance had sent a cease and desist letter so terrifying that it had effectively silenced the entire Paige clan. He had threatened them with restraining orders. He had threatened them with defamation lawsuits. He had threatened to drag them into court and flay them alive in front of a jury. They had retreated into the darkness. I assumed they were licking their wounds. I assumed they were scrambling to pay the bills now that their golden goose had flown the coop. I put my mug down and walked to the door. The mail had arrived. I usually dreaded the mail. For years, the mail had been a source of anxiety. It was where the overdue notices lived. But today, there was something different in the stack of flyers and coupons. It was a heavy envelope. It was thick and creamy and expensive. It felt like money. My name was written on the front in elaborate calligraphy. Ms. Harper Paige. There was no return address. I carried it into this kitchen. I grabbed a knife. I sliced open the seal. Inside was a card made of cardstock so thick it could probably stop a bullet. The text was embossed in gold leaf. Mr. and Mrs. Richard Paige request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their son, Chase Alexander Paige, to Miss Isabella Marie Sterling. I stared at the names. Chase. My brother, Chase. The man who 3 months ago was screaming in agony because I pepper-sprayed him in the face. The man who had stolen my identity to buy a truck. The man who had 0 job prospects and negative ambition. He was getting married. And not just to anyone. Isabella Sterling. I knew that name. Everyone in our county knew that name. The Sterlings owned the largest chain of car dealerships in the state. They were old money. They were country club royalty. They were the kind of people my father Richard spent his entire life trying to emulate and failing. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Chase had found a new host. He had latched onto the Sterling fortune. He must have charmed poor Isabella. He must have spun her a web of lies about his landscaping empire and his successful family. I looked at the date. The wedding was in 2 weeks. It was going to be held at the Sterling estate. Of course it was. My phone rang. It startled me so much I dropped the invitation. It landed face up on the floor. The gold letters glinted in the afternoon sun. I looked at the screen. It was a number I did not recognize. I should have let it go to voicemail. Julian had told me never to answer unknown numbers. But curiosity is a dangerous drug. I wanted to know. I wanted to hear the audacity. I swiped answer. Hello, I said. Harper. It was Richard. But it was not the Richard who had threatened to ruin me 3 months ago. It was not the Richard who had screamed at the repo man. This voice was soft. It was weary. It was the voice of a humble old man who had seen the error of his ways. "Do not hang up, Harper," he said quickly. "Please, just give your old dad 30 seconds. I did not hang up. I stood in my kitchen and gripped the counter. "You have 30 seconds, Richard," I said. "And if you threaten me, I will call Julian." "I am not calling to threaten you, Harper," Richard said. He let out a long sigh. "I am calling to apologize." I waited. The silence stretched. "We were wrong," he said. "Your mother and I. We were so wrong. We were scared. We were drowning in debt, and we panicked. We took advantage of you, and that was a terrible thing for a parent to do. I wake up every night feeling sick about it. It was a good performance. If I did not know him, I might have believed it." "What do you want, Richard?" I asked. "Did you get the invitation?" he asked. I looked down at the gold card on the floor. "I got it," I said. Chase and a sterling. That is quite a step up from stealing my credit cards. He has changed, Harper, Richard said. His voice became eager. He really has. Meeting Isabella changed him. He is working at her father's dealership now. He is in sales. He is doing well. He wants to be a better man. He wants to make things right. I rolled my eyes. Chase was a chameleon. He became whatever he needed to be to survive. So he found a rich girl, I said. Good for him. Why am I invited? You made it very clear that I am no longer part of the family. Because you are his sister, Richard said. And because we miss you. Stop it, I said. Cut the crap, Richard. Why am I invited? Richard paused. The mask slipped just a fraction. The Sterlings are very traditional people, he said. Family means everything to them. They know Chase has a sister, a successful sister, a creative director in the city. I smiled grimly. I see, I said. You bragged about me. You used my resume to sell Chase to the in-laws. They want to meet you, Harper, Richard said. Isabella asks about you all the time. Her parents are excited to welcome the whole family. It would look very strange if you were not there. It would raise questions. Questions about why the successful sister hates her brother, I said. Questions about why the loving parents are being sued by their daughter. Please, Harper, Richard said. His voice dropped to a whisper. We are asking for a truce. Just for the wedding. Just for one weekend. Come home. Stand by your brother. Let us be a family for one day. And why would I do that, I asked. What is in it for me besides the pleasure of watching you lie to millionaires? We will pay you back, Richard said. The words hung in the air. What did you say, I asked. We will pay you back, he repeated. Every cent. The truck, the credit cards, the insurance money. How, I asked. You are broke, Richard. You are unemployed. The Sterlings are generous, Richard said. Mr. Sterling is giving Chase a very large signing bonus when he joins the family business officially. And he has offered to help us with our mortgage as a wedding gift. Once the wedding is over, we will have liquidity. We will write you a check, Harper. We will make you whole. I stood there in my cheap apartment. I looked at the peeling paint on the wall. $100,000. That money could buy me a house. That money could replace the retirement fund I had drained to pay Julian. That money was my freedom. But I knew Richard. I knew a trap when I smelled one. You want me to come and play the happy sister so you can secure the bag, I said. You want me to help you con the Sterlings. I want you to help your brother start a new life, Richard said. And I want to pay my debts to you. Is that so hard to believe? It is impossible to believe, I said. Just come to the rehearsal dinner, Richard pleaded. Just come and meet them. If you do not like it, you can leave. But if you come, we will have a check waiting for you, a good faith payment, $10,000, cash. $10,000. It was a drop in the bucket, but it was tangible. I looked at the invitation again. Request the honor of your presence. They needed me. For the first time in my life, I was not the burden. I was the key. Without me, their perfect image cracked. Without me, the Sterlings might ask too many questions. Without me, the wedding might fall apart. I had the leverage. I did not trust them. I knew they were plotting something. But I also knew that if I stayed in this apartment, I would never see a dime of my money again. And more importantly, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see the house of cards they had built. I wanted to see Chase pretending to be a gentleman. I wanted to be there when it fell down. I will think about it, I said. Thank you, Harper, Richard said. He sounded relieved. He sounded triumphant. That is all I ask. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking. Not from fear this time, from anticipation. They invited me back into the lion's den. They thought they could use me one last time. They thought they could buy my silence with a promise of money they probably did not even have yet. I walked to the window. I watched the traffic below. I would go to the wedding, but I would not go as the dutiful daughter. I would go as the spy. I would go as the witness. I picked up my phone again. I dialed a number. Julian Vance. He answered on the first ring. Vance. It is Harper, I said. I just got an invitation to a wedding, and I think I just found a way to get my money back. Or at least I said, watching a police car drive by below. I found a way to send them to prison. Julian Vance slid a small black rectangle across his obsidian desk. It was a digital voice recorder. It was smaller than a pack of gum and thinner than a credit card. "You are walking into a shark tank," Harper Julian said. His voice was devoid of the warmth one might expect from a protector. "He was sending a soldier into battle, and he expected me to come back with a trophy. They do not want a reunion. They want an accomplice." I picked up the recorder. It felt cold and heavy in my hand. "You think they are going to try to incriminate me?" I asked. "I think they are desperate," Julian replied. He leaned back in his leather chair. "The Sterlings are due diligence people. They do not hand over millions of dollars to a son-in-law without checking the books. If your brother Chase is going to marry into that dynasty, he needs his credit to be clean. And right now his credit is a crime scene with your name written in chalk around the body. So they need me to mop up the blood," I said. Julian nodded. "They need you to say it was a loan," he said. "They need you to say it was consensual. They need you to sign a piece of paper that turns a felony into a family agreement. And when they ask you to sign that paper, you are going to make sure this device is recording every single word." I slipped the recorder into my clutch purse. It nestled there next to my lipstick and my car keys like a secret weapon. "I am ready," I said. Julian looked at me. For a brief second, his hard face softened. "Do not drink the wine, Harper," he said, "and do not sign your real name." The rehearsal dinner was held at the Sterling estate. It was a sprawling mansion that looked like something out of a period drama. There were manicured hedges and a fountain that sprayed water into the air with a rhythmic hush. The driveway was lined with imported cars. I pulled my sensible sedan up to the valet stand. The valet looked at my car with a polite disdain, but I did not care. I stepped out wearing a midnight blue dress I had rented for the occasion. It was silk. It was elegant. It was the armor of the successful sister they wanted me to be. I walked up the stone steps. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my face was a mask of cool composure. "Harper." I looked up. Richard and Brenda were standing at the top of the stairs. They looked like strangers. Richard was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, which meant it was rented or bought on another credit card I did not know about. Brenda was wearing a shimmering gold gown. Her hair was done up in a complex twist. She looked every inch the matriarch of a wealthy family. They did not look like people who had their electricity cut off 3 months ago. They looked like actors on a stage. Richard stepped forward. He opened his arms. "My beautiful girl," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. I let him hug me. I smelled his cologne. It was the same cheap musk he had always worn, but now it was layered over the scent of fear. His grip was tight. Too tight. It was not a hug. It was a restraint. "I am glad you came," Brenda whispered. She kissed my cheek. Her lips were dry. "Do not ruin this, Harper. Please." I pulled away. I smiled. It was the sharpest smile I had ever worn. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Mom," I said. We walked into the ballroom. It was a sea of crystal and white flowers. Waiters in white gloves circulated with trays of champagne. In the center of the room stood Chase. He was holding court. He was holding a glass of champagne in one hand and the hand of a petite blonde girl in the other. Isabella Sterling. She looked young. She looked innocent. She looked like a lamb standing next to a wolf in a tuxedo. Chase saw me. His eyes widened. For a second, I saw the panic flash behind his pupils. He remembered the pepper spray. He remembered the police threats. But then he remembered the Sterlings were watching. "Harper," he boomed. He strode over to me, dragging poor Isabella with him. He hugged me. I felt his body tense against mine. "I am so happy you made it, sis," he said. His voice was loud enough for the back of the room to hear. I patted his back. "Congratulations, Chase," I said. "You certainly landed on your feet." Chase pulled back. He turned to Isabella. "Bella, this is Harper," my big sister Chase said. "The creative director, the genius of the family." Isabella smiled. She had perfect teeth and kind eyes. "Oh, Harper," she said, "I have heard so much about you. Chase says you helped him so much with his landscaping business in the beginning. He says he could not have done it without your investment." Investment. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, but I swallowed it down with a sip of champagne. Did he say that I asked? I looked at Chase. He was sweating. "Oh, yes," Isabella continued. He told Daddy how you loaned him the startup capital for his truck and his equipment. It is so inspiring how you support each other. My family is the same way." I looked at Brenda and Richard. They were hovering nearby. Their eyes were locked on me. They were pleading. They were threatening. "Yes," I said slowly. "We certainly have a unique financial relationship." Isabella beamed. "Daddy wants to meet you," she said. "He's over by the bar." I spent the next hour shaking hands with millionaires. I played the role. I laughed at their jokes. I complimented the venue. I acted like the dutiful sister who was proud of her brother's sudden and inexplicable success. But all the while I was watching. I was watching Richard down scotch after scotch. I was watching Brenda nervously smooth her dress every time Mrs. Sterling looked at her. They were terrified. They were imposters in this world, and they knew it. One slip, one wrong word from me, and they would be escorted out by security. Halfway through the dinner, Brenda touched my elbow. "Come with me," she whispered. Her nails dug into my skin. "We need to touch up our lipstick." I followed her. We did not go to the ladies' room. We walked down a long hallway lined with oil paintings of dead Sterlings. We turned a corner into a small library. Richard was already there. So was Chase. Brenda closed the heavy oak door. She locked it. The sounds of the party faded away. The room was silent except for the ticking of a grandfather clock. "Okay," Richard said. He loosened his tie. "That is going well. The Sterlings love you, Harper. Good job." "What is this, Richard?" I asked. I clutched my purse tighter. I felt the outline of the recorder. I slid my thumb inside and pressed the button I had practiced finding by touch. "We need to talk business," Brenda said. She walked over to a desk and picked up a leather folder. "Now, Harper, listen," Richard said. He poured himself a drink from a decanter on the shelf. "Mr. Sterling is very impressed with Chase. He is going to make him a partner in the dealership. But there is a condition." "Of course there is," I said. "Mr. Sterling ordered a background check," Richard said. I raised an eyebrow. "And what did he find?" I asked. "He found the truck loan," Chase said. "He found the credit cards. He found the debt. And since you flagged them as fraud," Richard said quickly, looking at me with a glare, "the bank has frozen everything." "It looks like criminal activity, Harper. It looks like Chase is a thief." "He is a thief," I said. Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "Not in this room he isn't," he hissed. "Out there he is a future son-in-law. In here we need to fix this." Brenda stepped forward. She held out the folder. "Mr. Sterling is willing to overlook the debt if it is a family matter," she said. "If it is just a messy loan between siblings, he does not care. He just needs to know that Chase is not going to be arrested." "So we came up with a solution," Chase said. He pulled a pen from his pocket. Brenda opened the folder. Inside was a single document. It was typed on legal paper. I leaned in to read it. "Affidavit of Loan Agreement. I, Harper Paige, hereby acknowledge that all debts incurred under my name by Chase Paige and Richard Paige were authorized loans. I confirm that I gave full consent for the use of my credit and identity. I retract any previous claims of fraud or theft. I agree to a repayment schedule of $100 per month starting in the year 2030. I looked up. "You want me to sign this?" I asked. "It is the only way," Harper Brenda said. Her voice dropped to that desperate whisper she used when she wanted something. "If you sign this, the fraud investigation stops. The bank unlocks the accounts. Mr. Sterling gives Chase the job and the signing bonus. And then what I asked. And then we pay you," Richard said. "We get the bonus check next week, $50,000. We will give you half, $25,000 cash." "Harper, just for signing a piece of paper. You owe me $100,000, I said. "We will pay the rest." "Later," Brenda promised. "But we need this bonus. If Chase does not get this job, we have nothing. We lose the house, Harper. We lose everything." Chase stepped closer. He blocked the door. "Sign it, Harper," he said. "Do not be a bitch. You already ruined my truck. Do not ruin my wedding." I looked at them. They were cornering me. They were three predators circling a wounded animal. They thought they had the power. They thought the locked door and the looming threat of violence would break me. But they did not know I had Julian in my pocket, or at least his strategy. "So, let me get this straight," I said loudly. I wanted to make sure the microphone caught every syllable. "You are admitting that you opened these accounts without my permission." "We did what we had to do," Richard said. "You forged my signature on the insurance check," I said. "It was family money," Brenda snapped. "Stop acting like a lawyer. And now you are telling me that if I do not sign this false affidavit claiming it was a loan, you will not pay me back," I asked. "We cannot pay you back if we are destitute," Richard yelled. "Use your head, girl. Sign the paper. Save your brother. Get your money. Everyone wins." "And if I do not sign?" I asked. "Then you get nothing," Chase sneered. "And I will tell Isabella that you are a jealous, lying psycho who is trying to sabotage me. Who do you think she will believe, the man she loves, or the sister who showed up looking for a handout?" I looked down at the paper. If I signed this, I was perjuring myself. If I signed this, I was admitting that I lied to the bank. I would be liable for the debt forever. The repayment schedule of $100 a month starting in 6 years was a joke. They never intended to pay me. This was a trap, a waiver of liability dressed up as a peace treaty. But I needed to get out of this room. Chase was getting agitated. His face was turning red. I remembered the weight of him pinning me to the desk 3 months ago. I needed to act. "Okay," I said softly. Richard exhaled. The tension in the room broke. "Okay," he repeated. "I will sign it," I said. "But I want the $25,000 next week. I promise," Brenda said. She handed me the pen. Her hand was shaking. I took the heavy fountain pen. I bent over the desk. I looked at the signature line, Harper Paige. I pressed the pen to the paper. I felt the grain of the expensive bond beneath the tip. I did not sign Harper Paige. I scribbled a looping, illegible mess that looked nothing like my real signature. It looked like a child's drawing of a tornado. It was a scratch. It was a scar. And more importantly, I used my left hand. I am right-handed. Julian had told me if you are forced to sign under duress, alter your biometrics. Change the slant. Change the pressure. Make it unrecognizable. I stood up. I handed the pen back to Chase. "There," I said. "It is done." Brenda snatched the paper. She looked at it. She did not notice the messy scrawl. She only saw the ink on the line. She saw her salvation. "Thank you, Harper," she breathed. She tried to hug me again, but I stepped back. "I am leaving now," I said. "I have a headache." "You cannot stay for cake," Richard asked. He was suddenly jovial. He poured himself another drink. "No," I said. "I think I have had enough of this family for one lifetime." Chase unlocked the door. He opened it with a mock bow. "Drive safe, sis," he said with a smirk. I walked out of the library. I walked down the hall past the dead Sterlings. I walked through the ballroom where Isabella was laughing with her friends. I walked out the front door and down the stone steps. The valet brought my car. I tipped him $20. It was the last cash in my wallet. I got in. I locked the doors. I pulled the recorder out of my purse. The red light was still blinking, steady and true. I pressed stop. I had them. I had the confession. I had the coercion. I had the blackmail. I drove away from the Sterling estate. The mansion glowed in the rearview mirror like a golden cage. They thought they had trapped me. They thought they had won, but all they had done was hand me the key to their execution. The Rolling Hills Country Club was a fortress of white brick and manicured ivy that sat on the highest hill in the county. It was the kind of place where the air conditioning was always set to 68 degrees, and the staff moved with the silent efficiency of ghosts. It was a place where money was not discussed because it was assumed that everyone had plenty of it. The wedding reception was held in the grand ballroom. It was a cavernous space filled with 200 guests who represented the elite of the state. There were judges and senators and old money families who had owned land since the 19th century. The women wore silk and diamonds that cost more than my annual salary. The men wore tuxedos and held tumblers of scotch with hands that had never known a day of manual labor. I stood near a towering arrangement of white hydrangeas and sipped a glass of sparkling water. I was the invisible observer in a room full of peacocks. My midnight blue dress blended into the shadows of the drapes. I watched them. I watched the Sterlings moving through the crowd with the easy grace of people who knew they owned the room. And I watched my family. The Paiges were performing the role of a lifetime. Richard was holding court near the open bar. He had one hand in his pocket and the other wrapped around a glass of Macallan 25. He was laughing loudly at a joke made by a bank president. He looked flushed and triumphant. He looked like a man who believed he had successfully pulled off the heist of the century. He had traded his stolen credit rating for a seat at the king's table. Brenda was flitting between tables like a golden hummingbird. She was touching arms and complimenting dresses. She was whispering into the ears of the Sterling matriarchs, probably spinning tales of her charity work and her successful children. She looked radiant. The fear I had seen in the library 2 weeks ago was gone. She had the signed affidavit. She had the promise of the bonus check. She thought she was safe. And then there was Chase. My brother stood in the center of the dance floor, surrounded by a group of Isabella's cousins. They were young men with trust funds and expensive watches. Chase was leaning back on his heels with his chest puffed out. "You know how it is in logistics," Chase said loudly. His voice carried over the jazz quartet playing in the corner. "You have to be willing to take risks. When I started my fleet with just one truck, everyone told me I was crazy. They said the overhead would kill me. But you have to spend money to make money, right, boys?" "Right," the cousins chorused. They nodded sagely. They had no idea that the one truck was a repo waiting to happen. They had no idea that the fleet existed only in Chase's delusions. "I expanded the business last quarter," Chase continued. He took a sip of champagne. "I brought in new equipment. Landscaping is just the beginning. I am looking into commercial real estate next. The margins are better." Commercial real estate. He could not even pay his own rent without forging my signature on a lease. I felt a vibration in my purse. It was my phone. I checked it surreptitiously. It was a text from Julian Vance. "The package has been delivered. The device is connected. We are green for go." I put the phone back. A cold calm settled over me. It was the calm of a sniper who has adjusted for wind and elevation and is simply waiting to exhale. The jazz music faded. The lights in the ballroom dimmed until the crystal chandeliers glowed like constellations. A spotlight hit the small stage at the front of the room. Mr. Sterling walked up to the microphone. He was a formidable man with silver hair and a jaw like a granite block. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Sterling said. His voice was deep and resonant. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate the union of my daughter Isabella and her husband Chase." Applause rippled through the room. Brenda clapped so hard her bracelets jingled. "We are so proud to welcome Chase into the family," Mr. Sterling said. "He is a young man of vision and ambition. It is rare to find someone these days who understands the value of hard work and integrity. He built his business from the ground up. He reminds me of myself when I was his age. I saw Chase beam. He actually looked humble. It was sickening, but we all know that a man is shaped by his family." Mr. Sterling continued, "And we are honored to join our family with the Paiges. Richard and Brenda, you have raised a fine son." Richard raised his glass. He nodded solemnly. He accepted the praise for raising a fraud as if it were his due. "And now," Mr. Sterling said, "I believe the mother of the groom would like to say a few words." Brenda walked up to the stage. The spotlight followed her gold dress. She took the microphone. She looked out at the sea of wealthy faces. She looked at the bankers and the lawyers and the investors. She saw her future security in their eyes. She took a deep breath. She smiled a tearful, beatific smile. "Thank you," Arthur Brenda said. Her voice quavered perfectly. "This is the happiest day of my life. To see my son marry such a beautiful soul is all a mother could ask for." She paused for effect. She looked down at Chase and Isabella. "Chase has always been a fighter," she said. "He has faced challenges, but he never gave up. He built his dreams with his own 2 hands. But he did not do it alone. No one succeeds alone." My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. It was the final nail in the coffin she was building for me. She wanted to publicly bind me to their lie. She wanted witnesses to my complicity. "We are a family that supports each other," Brenda said. "We lift each other up. And there is one person here tonight who has been Chase's rock, his silent partner, his biggest cheerleader." She scanned the room. Her eyes found me in the shadows. There was a glint of triumph in her gaze. She thought she owned me. She thought the fake signature on that affidavit was a leash she could yank whenever she wanted. "And here is Harper," Brenda announced. She swept her hand toward me. "Our beloved daughter, the brilliant creative director, the sister who has always supported her brother financially and emotionally. Harper, come up here and share this moment with us. The spotlight swung through the room. It blinded me for a second. 200 heads turned. 400 eyes stared at me. Come on up, Harper, Brenda urged. Do not be shy. The room erupted in polite applause. I stood still for a heartbeat. I felt the weight of the moment. They wanted the supportive sister. They wanted the successful financier who validated Chase's lies. They wanted the final prop for their stage play. I looked at Brenda on the stage. She was smiling, but her eyes were hard. They said, "Get up here and play your part, or you will never see a dime." I looked at Chase. He looked nervous, but expectant. I smiled. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked through the crowd. My silk dress rustled softly. I held my head high. I clutched my clutch purse with the phone inside. I walked up the stairs to the stage. Brenda reached out to hug me. She leaned in close to my ear. "Good girl," she whispered. "Just wave and smile." I pulled back. I looked at her. I looked at the microphone in her hand. I took it from her. "Thank you, Mom," I said. My voice was amplified. It filled the cavernous room. It bounced off the crystal and the gold leaf. I looked out at the audience. I saw Mr. Sterling watching me with interest. I saw Julian's paralegal sitting in the back row disguised as a vendor. "I am so happy to be here," I said. "My mother is right. I have supported Chase for a long time." Brenda nodded. She looked relieved. "But I think it is time we clarified exactly what that support looked like." I continued. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen once. The large projection screen behind the stage, which had been showing a slideshow of Chase and Isabella's childhood photos, flickered. It went black for a second, and then a new image appeared. It was not a wedding photo. It was a credit report. The room went silent. The silence was heavy and instant. And then I began to speak. The screen behind me flickered. The slideshow of Chase's fabricated childhood achievements vanished into a black void. For a moment, the room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector cooling fan and the nervous clinking of silverware against china. I looked at the audiovisual technician in the booth at the back of the room. He was a young man named Kevin. He was wearing a headset and looking at me with wide, terrified eyes. But he nodded once. He was on Julian's payroll for the night. He had the cable. He had the feed. I tapped my phone screen. The image on the giant projection screen changed. It was crisp. It was bright. It was 10 feet tall. It was not a picture of Chase winning a Little League trophy. It was a high-resolution scan of a credit report from Equifax. The background was stark white. The text was black. But the numbers were a violent, angry red. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. It sounded like all the oxygen was being sucked out of the room at once. I leaned into the microphone. "My mother said I have been a silent partner in Chase's business," I said. My voice was calm. It echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "And she is right. I have been very silent, but numbers do not know how to be silent." I pointed to the screen. "This is a loan for $65,000, I said. "It was taken out 6 months ago to purchase a Ford F-150 Platinum Edition truck. The applicant listed on the loan is Harper Paige, but the signature at the bottom is not mine." I swiped the screen. The image zoomed in on the signature line. It was a shaky forgery. It was clearly written by someone trying too hard to look elegant. "That is Chase's handwriting," I said. Chase took a step forward. His face was the color of a boiled lobster. He dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the dance floor with a sharp, wet crash. "Turn it off," he screamed. His voice cracked. "She is lying. She photoshopped it. Kevin, turn it off." But Kevin did not turn it off. Kevin was busy pretending to fiddle with a knob that did not do anything. I swiped again. Slide 2 appeared. It was a bank statement. It showed a series of transactions at the Golden Nugget Casino in Las Vegas. $5,000, $3,000, $2,000, all charged to a credit card in my name. "This is the startup capital my mother mentioned," I said. Apparently, the landscaping business required a significant investment in slot machines and bottle service. Brenda rushed toward me. Her gold dress shimmered as she moved. She looked like a desperate bird of prey. "Give me that microphone," she hissed. She reached for me with clawed hands. "You are sick, Harper. You are ruining your brother's big day." I stepped back. I was faster than her. "I am not ruining it, Mom," I said. "I am just giving the toast you asked for." I tapped the screen again. Slide 3. The image changed to a grainy black and white video. It was footage from a small camera I had hidden in the living room plant at 42 Oak Street 3 months ago before I moved out. The angle was low, but the faces were clear. It showed Richard and Brenda sitting at the kitchen table. They were drinking wine. They were laughing. The audio boomed through the ballroom speakers. It was loud. It was undeniable. "The Sterlings are idiots," Richard's voice said on the video. "Arthur Sterling has more money than brains. Once Chase marries that girl, we are set for life." In the ballroom, Arthur Sterling stood up. His chair scraped violently against the floor. His face went from confusion to a dark purple rage. "We just need to keep up appearances until the wedding," Brenda's voice said on the video. "We will use Harper's credit to float the bills. She will never know. And even if she finds out, she is too weak to do anything about it. She is just our retirement plan, Richard. That is all she is." The video ended. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. 200 wealthy socialites stared at the stage in horror. They looked at Brenda. They looked at Richard. They looked at the people they had welcomed into their circle. And they saw monsters. Isabella Sterling stood up. She was shaking. She looked at Chase. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "You called my father an idiot," she whispered. Her voice carried in the silence. "You said I was a cash cow." Chase tried to grab her hand. "Bella, no," he pleaded. "It is a deep fake. It is AI. Harper did this with a computer. She is jealous. You know she is jealous." "Do not touch me!" Isabella screamed. She pulled away from him. She ran. She ran off the dance floor. She ran past her stunned father. She ran out of the ballroom doors, sobbing into her hands. The spell broke. Richard roared. It was the sound of pure animal fury. He charged the stage. He was not a frail old man with high blood pressure anymore. He was a man who had just watched his entire life burn to ash in 60 seconds. "You ungrateful bitch," he screamed. "I will kill you." He scrambled up the stairs. His eyes were wild. He reached for my throat. I did not move. I did not flinch. Because I saw Julian Vance standing up in the front row. Julian was wearing a tuxedo that fit him better than anyone else in the room. He looked bored. He looked like he was watching a play he had already seen. He raised one hand. He snapped his fingers. The doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. 6 uniformed police officers marched in. They were not the local beat cops Richard played golf with. These were state troopers. They were serious men with serious faces. Richard froze. He was halfway up the stairs. His hand was inches from my dress. Brenda screamed. It was a high, thin sound that made everyone flinch. "No!" she wailed. "No, no, no!" The lead officer walked onto the dance floor. He held a piece of paper in his hand. He looked at Chase. "Chase Alexander Paige," he said. His voice was loud and authoritative. Chase looked around for an exit. There was none. He was trapped in the spotlight. He was trapped in his rented tuxedo. "You are under arrest for 18 counts of identity theft, 5 counts of wire fraud, and 2 counts of grand larceny," the officer said. He stepped forward. He pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Chase started to cry. It was not a dignified cry. He sobbed like a toddler who had dropped his ice cream. "Daddy, help me," he blubbered. "Mom, do something." But Richard and Brenda could do nothing. 2 more officers moved toward the stage. They grabbed Richard by the arms. They pulled him down the stairs. He stumbled. He looked small and old and pathetic. "Richard Paige," the officer said, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse regarding the financial exploitation of your daughter." "Elder abuse," Brenda shrieked. She was backing away, knocking over a flower arrangement. "We are her parents. We own her." "Brenda Paige," the officer said. He grabbed her wrist. "You are under arrest for the same charges, and for the misuse of a telecommunications device for harassment." I watched from the stage. I watched them put handcuffs on my father. The metal clicked shut with a sound of finality. I watched them handcuff my mother. She was thrashing. Her gold dress was twisted. Her hair was falling out of its pins. She looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a hatred so pure it felt like heat on my skin. "You did this!" she screamed. "You ruined us! You ruined the family!" I leaned into the microphone one last time. "I did not ruin the family, Mom," I said softly. "I just turned on the lights." The officers marched them out. It was a parade of shame. Chase was weeping. Richard was cursing. Brenda was wailing. They walked past Mr. Sterling. Arthur Sterling looked at Richard. He did not say a word. He just turned his back. It was the most brutal rejection I had ever seen. The ballroom was chaotic. People were whispering. People were taking photos. The waiters were frozen with their trays of champagne. I stood on the stage alone. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I disconnected my phone from the cable. The screen behind me went black. I looked at the crowd. I saw the judgment in their eyes, but this time the judgment was not directed at me. They looked at me with fear. They looked at me with respect. They saw a woman who had walked into a fire and walked out holding a bucket of water. I walked down the stairs. Julian met me at the bottom. He handed me a glass of champagne. "That was cinematic," he said. "Did I get everything I asked?" Julian nodded. "The police have the affidavit you signed in the library," he said. "Since you signed it with a fake signature, and we have the recording of them coercing you, it is evidence of extortion. They are not getting out on bail, Harper. Not tonight. And probably not for a very long time." I took a sip of the champagne. It tasted cold and dry and perfect. I looked at the empty doorway where my family had been dragged out. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was lightness. The heavy stone of obligation was gone. The fear of their disapproval was gone. The hope that they would one day love me was gone, and in its place was silence. Beautiful, golden silence. I turned to Julian. "Let's go," I said. "I have a wedding gift to return." We walked out of the ballroom. I did not look back. I walked past the whispering guests. I walked past the shocked staff. I walked out into the cool night air. The fountain was still spraying water. The stars were still shining. The world had not ended. In fact, for me, the world was just beginning. My name was Harper Paige, and I owed nobody nothing. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but when they finally crush you, they grind everything to dust. It has been 1 year since the night I walked out of the Rolling Hills Country Club, leaving my family in handcuffs. 12 months of court dates and depositions and legal filings that piled up like snowdrifts. The fallout was spectacular. The wedding, of course, was canceled before the police cars even left the driveway. Isabella Sterling did not just break off the engagement. Her father, Arthur Sterling, sued my parents for fraud and misrepresentation. He was a man with deep pockets and a bruised ego, and he hunted them with the relentless efficiency of a bloodhound. Chase did not get his signing bonus. He got a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against Richard and Brenda, he received a reduced sentence of 18 months in a minimum security facility and 5 years of probation. He is currently serving his time in a facility 3 hours away. I hear he works in the laundry. I imagine the steam and the heat remind him of the hell he tried to put me through. Richard and Brenda fought the charges for as long as their money held out, which was exactly 3 months. After that, the dominoes fell fast. The house at 42 Oak Street is gone. The bank foreclosed on it 6 months ago. I drove past it once just to see. The grass was overgrown. The windows were dark. The new stainless steel grill Richard loved so much was gone, sold for scrap or legal fees. A for sale sign stood in the yard, leaning crookedly in the wind. My parents did not go to prison. The judge was lenient on first-time offenders of their age. Instead, they received massive fines, community service, and a permanent criminal record that marked them as financial predators. They live in a 2-room apartment on the south side of town now. It is next to the train tracks. The walls are thin and the neighbors are loud. It is the kind of place they used to drive past and lock their car doors. Richard works as a night watchman at a warehouse. He spends his nights walking in circles in the dark, wearing a uniform that does not fit him. Brenda works at a discount grocery store. She stocks shelves. I have heard from a friend that she wears a hat pulled low over her eyes so the customers do not recognize the woman who used to be the queen of the ladies' auxiliary. They have lost their friends. They have lost their status. They have lost the only thing that ever mattered to them, which was the perception of others. As for me, I have been busy. My credit score is 750. It took months of work with Julian and a team of forensic accountants to scrub the stain of their crimes from my record. But I did it. The red flags are gone. The disputes are settled. My name is clean. I bought a house last month. It is not the colonial revival Mark and I looked at. It is a modern townhouse in the city with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the skyline. The deed has one name on it: Harper Paige. Mark is back in my life, but things are different. He came to me a week after the wedding. He stood at my door with flowers and an apology that lasted 20 minutes. He said he was wrong. He said he should have believed me. He said he let the chaos scare him away. I forgave him because I understood. Brenda is a master manipulator, and Mark is a simple man who values peace. But forgiveness is not amnesia. We are dating again. We go to dinner. We talk about the future. But I did not put his name on the mortgage. I did not ask him to move in. I learned a hard lesson in that bank office. Security does not come from a partner. Security does not come from a family. Security comes from ownership. I am sitting on my velvet sofa drinking a cup of expensive tea. The morning sun is streaming through the glass. It is a quiet Saturday. I do not have to worry about the mail. I do not have to worry about my phone blowing up with threats. And then my phone rings. It is sitting on the marble coffee table. The screen lights up. Unknown number. I stare at it. I know who it is. Julian told me that their probation terms allow them limited phone use but forbade them from contacting me. But rules never stopped Brenda Paige. I pick up the phone. I do not say hello. I just listen. Harper. The voice is jagged and wet. It sounds like it has been dragged over gravel. Harper, please do not hang up. It is Mom. I say nothing. I take a sip of tea. I am sick. Harper. Brenda sobs. Her voice cracks. It is my chest. I have a terrible infection. The doctor prescribed antibiotics, but the insurance does not cover them. They cost $200. She pauses, waiting for me to jump in, waiting for the old Harper to ask if she is okay, waiting for the checkbook to open. Your father does not get paid until Friday, she continues. I cannot breathe, Harper. I am scared. Please. It is just $200. You have so much now. I saw your promotion on LinkedIn. You would not miss it. I listen to her weeping. It sounds practiced. It sounds like the same cry she used when she wanted Richard to buy her a new car. It sounds like the cry she used when she told the police I was on drugs. It has been exactly 10 seconds. I remember being 16 years old. I remember standing in the kitchen asking for money to go on a school trip. I remember Brenda laughing at me. I remember her telling me that the world did not owe me anything. Mom, I say. My voice is calm. It is the voice of a stranger. Harper, thank God, Brenda cries. You will help me. I knew you would. I look out the window at the city I conquered. You told me once that if I wanted to survive, I had to figure it out, I say. There is a silence on the other end of the line. A heavy, stunned silence. Now it is your turn, I say. I pull the phone away from my ear. I can hear her shouting my name. It sounds tiny and tinny, like a ghost trapped in a machine. I press the red button. The line goes dead. I tap the screen 3 times. Block caller. I stand up. I walk to the balcony door and slide it open. The air outside is crisp and cold. It smells of autumn leaves and exhaust fumes and victory. I step out onto the balcony. I lean against the railing. Below me, the city is waking up. Cars are moving in steady lines. People are walking their dogs. Life is moving forward. I am 30 years old. I have a house. I have a career. I have a future that belongs entirely to me. I take a deep breath. The air fills my lungs. It is sharp and clean. I do not feel guilty. I do not feel sad. I feel peace. It is a cold peace. It is a peace built on boundaries and reinforced steel, but it is mine, and for the first time in my life, I am finally free. We are often taught that family is a sacred bond that must be preserved at all costs, even at the expense of our own soul. But I learned that true family isn't defined by DNA or a shared last name. It is built on the foundation of mutual respect, safety, and accountability. Walking away from toxicity isn't an act of betrayal. It is a profound act of self-love. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is to stop being the victim and become the architect of your own peace.